So June was a bit hectic. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessica and I'm ThisKiwi. Today we are going to talk about the most travel that I have ever done in my life, at least theoretically, and that is the amazing Readathon, or TAR, hosted by Bree from Four Paws and a Book. Thank you so much, Bree, for hosting that. It was incredible. It was a great experience. And so this is loosely inspired by The Amazing Race. And so for each city we have prompts and we have to read books based on those prompts. Let me know in the comments below which team you guys were on. And I was on Team General, which encompassed literary fiction, historical fiction, and contemporary fiction. And so in this video, I'm going to be going through weeks 1 and 2 of the readathon, including prompts and books, and any sightseeing books as well that I managed to complete along the way. Our first city that we went to was Toronto, and that was to read a book that you didn't own. And for this, I chose Confessions of the Fox by Geordie Rosenberg. And this follows a Dr. Voth who is uncovering a manuscript of an orphan named P. It also follows Jack Shepherd, who was a renowned thief and a jailbreaker back in England, kind of 18th century London. Jack falls in love with a woman named Best, who is a sex worker, and they end up getting into all kinds of mischief, right up until the very end of Jack. This is an interesting account of what it was to be a trans man through the ages, and it does have some gruesome imagery. Dr. Voth's story is told in the form of footnotes as he's editing this manuscript, which I thought was a really interesting take at first. However, it did start getting really annoying when he would just like pinpoint something and then go on with a random story that had nothing to do with the book whatsoever. And things like that just really didn't fit in with Jack's story, and it kind of took away from it. And so for that reason, I gave it a 3.75. So our second city, we went to Buenos Aires, and that was to read 2 POV book because it takes 2 to tango. And this was a little difficult to fulfill at first, but I ended up choosing A Marvelous Light by Freya Marske. And as I said in my June TBR video, I thought this was going to be all over the place, like it didn't know where it was going. But surprisingly, it was actually a really good book. I really enjoyed myself. Really enjoyed listening to it. The narrators were great. It does follow Robin and Edwin, so you got those dual POVs there, as they try and figure out what happened to Robin's predecessor. Edwin is a real ass towards Robin right from the very beginning, but he does work with him in order to save everyone from this massive threat. I thought the magic was really interesting. I liked that it was almost like electricity that went through their veins. I also thought the visions that Robin started having were really creepy as well. I gave this 4 stars, which was a really nice surprise. Berlin was our third city, and this was to read a book that involved movement. And this was really fun because one of our team hosts is from Germany. And shout out to Eva from Pretty Purple Polka Dots. The prompt itself was quite confusing for me, so luckily there was a group chat that like we could all kind of hash out ideas and stuff like that. As far as like teen genre, this was kind of my first detour from that I ended up going with How High We Go in the Dark. And this is kind of more like a sci-fi dystopian, so it wasn't really historical, general, literary. That some of it could have been literary, but I didn't class it as that. And this was written by Sequoia Nagamatsu, and I would describe this as like a short story collection with all within the same world and each kind of linking back to a different story in some very small way. So it centers around this plague and how this plague has wiped out essentially most of everybody on the planet. Um, and you learn about how it affects people through all of these different perspectives and also how it started. I don't usually like short story collections, but this one I did like because it was all within the same universe and because like there were characters from different stories that were mentioned in others, and so it kind of gave a uniformity, which I appreciated. I think I gave this 4 stars, and because it was a host favorite, I got an extra 100 GRC, which was the currency essentially for the race. So our next city that we went to was Paris, and that was to read a book that was an award winner. For this, I chose The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is was also the book club book for the month for Pokemon. Um, and this was my first Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and I was impressed. I've heard people like say this is the best book that's ever written, and I don't quite think it reaches that higher standard. I did really enjoy the book though. It follows Evelyn Hugo, who is an aging actress in Hollywood. Um, and she was like this socialite, this big star, this huge name. Um, and it turns out as she's getting to the end, she is finally ready to tell her story and tell the truth of her life. So enter Monique, who is a kind of like an unknown, unheard of reporter. She wants to build a name for herself. And it turns out that the only person that Evelyn will actually talk to is Monique. There is a reason for that. It is not the reason that I thought it was going to be, which was a nice surprise, but there is absolutely a reason why she's the one person. I found Evelyn to be a firecracker. She is a strong woman. She knows exactly who she wants. In contrast, Monique was quite a quiet character, um, quite movable, I guess, quite amenable to other people. Um, but she does start learning how to find her voice through Evelyn, which is really nice to see. This, as the story unfolds, we kind of find out why she had so many husbands. And I don't want to spoil too much, but I will say that most of the marriages were essentially marriages of convenience, and I found that they were very quick marriages as well, apart from maybe a couple of them. I did end up giving it a 4 star. I don't think I could have given it any higher than that. I would like to reread the book physically instead of like in audio form to see if maybe that would affect my rating. So, Cape Town, which was our fifth leg of the race, was to read a book with nature on the cover. And in comes the first DNF that I had for the entire race. Um, I chose A Constellation of Vital Phenomena by Anthony Mara. And I read it to 51% and went further. I thought it was really boring and just it was I hate to say it was a waste of my time, but it really was. Um, this follows Ahmed, who is a failed physician and ends up adopting a a young girl after her father is taken by Russian military. They make their way to a bombed out hospital where they encounter Sonia, who was the only doctor left to treat streams of the injured people that come in. It does go back and forward between the past and the present, and apparently this is all set in a 5 day span. But the time jumps, maybe because I listened to it, the time jumps just kind of blended together for me, and it was really confusing and boring, and it just wasn't for me. But because I read 51%, it does count. It only counted for the amount of pages that I read. Um, but you know what? That was okay with me. So for sightseeing for those first 2 weeks, sightseeing was for people who had read the book in the leg and had time before the next leg dropped. There were 50 additional prompts. Of those, I read 6 books in the first 2 weeks, and those were Comfort by Ellen Van Nevin, which is a poetry book that I think was a bit too smart for me. I didn't really like it, I didn't really understand it. Genderqueer by Maya Kabadi. And this is a graphic novel about a person trying to find their way through the world where they belong. I resonated with some of the things that I was saying. Um, I gave it a 4.25. I do still struggle with that pronoun thing though. Next book I read was Find Your Flow, and that was a self-help book about how stress can affect your digestive system and tips on how to manage that stress. It's probably something that I should get a physical copy of and read several times. Next one was And Every Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. This was a very short novella. It was like under 100 pages. About a man battling Alzheimer's disease and his relationship with his grandson, and also his son. This was very genuine and very pure and lovely, and I really enjoyed it. Next one I read was Our Wives Under the Sea. This was another host favorite. A woman, it was about a woman who gradually loses her wife after a disaster has occurred in an expedition that was under the sea. Um, Comparing the two perspectives was really interesting, seeing the gradual mental separation um, between the two of them, and also kind of seeing the wife that came back kind of lose the plot, and also the wife that is now caring for her just trying to care for her, and trying to understand what happened. It was really quite interesting, seeing those two perspectives. The final sightseeing book that I read for those 2 weeks was The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and slow clap for that one, my friends. 5 stars. 5 stars, hard 5 stars. This followed Lally, who is basically sent to Auschwitz, and he's there for quite a long time, over quite a few years. He's thrown a bone and becomes the one of the tattooists, which essentially saves him from the gas chamber. Uh, it's there where he falls in love with a prisoner. And this is essentially a story about love and resilience and still being kind in such an unkind place, and surviving in a brutal era where life is never guaranteed. So for those 2 weeks, I had some meh reads, I had some great reads. Next video, I will come back with you with weeks 3 and 4. Until then, let me know how your journey went through that first half of the race, and what were some of your best reads. Until next time, bye bye.